Nnimmo Bassey, you're chair of Friends of the Earth International, which has got groups all the way around the world. This report, which has just come out, is saying that GM, genetically modified food technologies, are a complete failure in developing countries. What is going on?
Indeed, we believe that the genetic engineering has not delivered on any of the promises anywhere in the world, both in the developed world and the developing countries. Over the years, we keep hearing the same stories, that GM crops produce higher yields, that they require less pesticides because the seeds themselves are pesticides. They require less herbicides, but all these have not played out at all.
But we hear from the Monsantos of this world and the other big American and European countries that GM crops are actually doing very well, and that they've never been more successful, and more farmers, especially poor farmers, they tell us, are now adopting them. Are you saying that this is wrong?
It's completely wrong. They keep on fabricating the same false stories year after year. I mean, we've made reports, Friends of the International and other groups have made reports that have clearly shown the GM crops are not really spreading into new territories. They're just expanding farms in the same old places where they've been growing them. And in fact, the negative impacts of genetically engineered crops are getting more visible. Poor farmers are abandoning the crops. The example that the biotech industry have been using to show that small-scale farmers are embracing GMOs, one of the best examples is BT cotton growing in Maketini flats in South Africa. Now, when they started out, there were quite a few farmers, but right now, most of these farmers have abandoned cultivating BT cotton in South Africa. The small-scale farmers have found that this is no way to go.
Are you saying that this technology is not suited to small farmers, only to very big farmers?
By very nature of the whole thing, it's not suitable for mixed cropping. It's not suitable for small-scale farming. GMOs are only suitable for monocultures because they depend on intensive use of chemicals and herbicides. Everything else must go. If you try it on small scale, it just doesn't work. Even at the large scale, they don't yield better than conventional crops. And
we're reading about in America and elsewhere in China that the crops are producing super pests and super weeds and things like that. Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, this is what has been happening, because they tell us we are going to use less pesticide, less herbicides, but the seeds, the pests are resisting. We're having super bugs, super pests, and then the weeds are getting more resistant to these Roundup chemicals. So you're having super weeds. So every year, farmers have to use more quantities of chemicals, more intense concentrations of these chemicals, and it's just damaging to the environment. It's not delivering on any promise at all.
Your report links very clearly in the Indian section to the GM crops and farmer suicides. What is happening here?
Well, you see, the case in India should be a warning signal for everybody around the world that GM crops don't benefit anyone except the biotech industry. Now, a lot of the farmers in India have had to depend, because naturally, if you use GM crops, you have to depend on credits, you have to depend on chemicals, and because the yields don't pay back the investment, these farmers are pushed into debt, and some of them have to drink the chemicals that they were using to cultivate the crops and to commit suicide. So this is what is going on.
One of the other points you make is that the promises which the companies made 20 odd years ago when they started this was that there would be very many different sorts of crops. In fact, there's only 3 or 4. Is that is that the nature of the technology, or is it just that the companies were never telling the truth?
I think the companies know that they've not been telling the whole truth. They have to concentrate on a few crops and insist that they spread this around the world. And in fact, by the nature of the industry, they're eroding the biodiversity of the world, destroying seeds, and concentrating on the staple crops. But right now, they're pushing into Africa, especially trying to take up staple crops like cassava, like cowpea. And the new approach is to tell the people, well, we can produce crops that are more nutritious. But the truth is that For example, if you have to eat a lot of cassava to have enhanced levels of vitamin A, you may need to eat tons of it every day. And people don't eat this food this way.
It seems to us that the front line, if you like, of the GM companies is now in Africa, and that's where they're concentrating all their marketing and their technology. What are you finding in Africa? Is there resistance to the crops?
I think the GM industry is pushing into Africa because it's more or less the last frontier they've not been able to penetrate. And this is because naturally African agriculture is small scale based for family farming, and is a system of seed savings and seed sharing over the years. The industry does not permit sharing of seeds, because once they contaminate the seeds and erode the biodiversity, because of the patents they have on their seeds, farmers would have to be forced to buy seeds every year, and African farmers don't operate that way. It's not just suitable. And so they're doing all they can to open up the African market by weakening the biosafety laws and erecting structures that will allow them to push in. And unfortunately, fortunately, the farmers are resisting this because there are better ways of cultivating and doing things. And we've seen across the continent that agroecological means.
Tell me now, this is one of the alternatives to genetic engineering. What exactly is agroecology?
This is cultivating crops in a way that is sustainable, using natural means, going organic, using natural inputs, not dependent on chemical inputs. You know, this is a system that farmers have developed over the centuries, selecting the best seeds, cross-breeding, developing the best that suits the environment. And we've seen environments that have been impacted adversely by weather or by climate recovering by the use of these seeds.
But the GM companies would argue that this approach is never going to feed the burgeoning populations of Africa or Asia or whatever. They say there is no alternative. We have to go down this high-tech route, and that means land grabs, and it means large enterprises. And this agroecology thing is a lovely idea, but it's just not going to be efficient enough. How would you respond to that?
I think it's the myth that the biotech industry has been pushing for many years now, that large-scale industrial farming will feed the world. But this has been exposed as a lie. In 2008, there was a report by the International Assessment of Agricultural Science and Technology, the ISTAD, and clearly that report showed that the future of agriculture in the world, the feeding of the population of this world would not depend on industrial farming. Certainly would not depend on biotechnology, modern biotechnology. That this small-scale farming is what is going to feed the world because of the diversity of seeds, because of the people are producing food that are culturally appropriate, suitable to their environments. And it's a simple truth that the world should just accept, and the industry should just close shop and focus on what they do best, which is destruction.
Nnimmo Bassey, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.